Hey everyone, we're going to tie a copper john. This is a super classic, really popular trout fly that has been around for a number of years. Probably one of the most popular flies in the country. It was created as a really heavy dropper fly to be fished under grasshoppers, big caddis, things like that. But trout love it as it is and they crush it. We also find in the Great Lakes it's a fantastic steelhead fly. So today we're going to tie a size you can use for either trout or steelhead. All right, let's take our hook here, secure that in the vise. Today we're using a 3761 in a size 10. This is a great 1X long nymph hook that's pretty darn strong. It's designed as a 2X heavy. We're using a pretty big bead. This is a 5/32 Cyclops in gold. That big bead really kind of lends it to that big dropper size and gets this fly down fast. So if you're fishing some riffle water, anywhere that has some speed to the current, this is a really great fly to have on. We're going to start behind some weight. Oh, I should tell you, we're using a little bit of lead free here. 0.25 6/0. Start this behind those wraps. Trim your excess off, and we're going to bring that back to about the barb. Now, the first part of this fly is probably the toughest. These biots here give a lot of folks fits, and that's okay. They gave me a lot of fits too, and I'm going to share a few secrets with you. Number one, once you get to the barb, we're going to create a little thread bump. So try and wrap your thread on top of itself a few times. And that's going to help splay out these biots. You only have to do it 2 or 3 times. I'm struggling here. Now once you get your biots chopped off, I'll show you what they look like in the package here. Rusty brown's kind of your standard color. You can use these in black as well for stoneflies. They work great. You need to orient these so they splay outward like that. That's really important. That does most of the work for you. Once you measure up those tips so that they match up, measure them to about, I like 3/4 of the shank length. Some guys like just half. Transfer that measurement to your left hand. Here's the big deal. You're not cranking them down right now. These are really light pinch wraps. I'm going to use 2. Because no matter what you do, if you try and tie those in right away, they don't tend to sit. So pinch and then pull with your bobbin, and then splay them out with your hands. Make sure you like where they're at, and then carry your thread up to your lead where you can trim it off. We need to create a tapered body for the wire to sit on here. So I like to use any extra material I can as part of the underbody. Start bringing your thread back, and we're actually going to use some medium copper wire on this. Anything smaller than a 10, so if you're going to 12s, 14s, 16s, you can go down to the brassy size wire. But 10s and above, medium's pretty good. You can even go up to large if you want. I'm going to tie this in on the near side of the hook, so my side, and bring it back to the biots where those are tied in. Bring your thread forward to the wire. And to create a tapered body here, what we need to do is simply go back with the thread, then forward, then not quite as far back, then forward, then not quite as far, and so on. And that creates a perfect little thread body for us to wrap our wire on. Okay, you'll notice I wrapped right on top of my weighted wire here as well, because I'm going to wrap this wire all the way up and then wrap my thread back over it. This is a great time to use your rotary function of your vise if you have that. I'm rocking a manual today, so we're just gonna do this the old school way. Real simple, take wraps that butt up to each other. Take your time. It's never going to be perfect. You're going to have a few gaps no matter what you do. That's just how it is. Don't worry about it. Okay, capture this by taking 3 or 4 wraps on top, 3 or 4 wraps in front, and then bring the nozzle of your bobbin all the way up to the hook shank and start working that wire. This one's still a little loose. I'm going to take a few more wraps, excuse me. Here we go. All right, now we're going to tie in the wing case. We're using some large flat pearl tinsel. You can use Flashabou, you can use some whatever you like. If you like opal, there's a lot of options out there. I used to use a lot of holographic tinsel as well. I'm going to wrap this all the way back on top of the wire here. Trim off your excess, make sure that's in there secure. Next thing, we're going to use some thin skin. This is a great little easy wingback material to use. You know, when I first started tying, it was all turkey feathers and you had to go buy a spray to keep it from breaking apart, and this is a real easy way to do it. It comes in tons of different colors. Black's just the classic way to go, especially with this pearl flashback we're doing today. There's a shiny section and a little more matte section. Make sure the shiny section's down so that it's up when we fold it over. And just lift these to check your length. That looks pretty good. Sometimes you can use your scissors to fold that back before you trim it. That's okay, we're gonna wrap right over that. Next thing, you're gonna want some Peacock Coral. That's gonna form most of this front part of the fly. I like to use 3 or 4 strands here. Tie those in by the tips. And you can either break these off with your thumbnails or snip them off, either way. I'm going to do something a little bit different here. I'm actually going to tie off my thread and switch to a thinner thread. I'm going to switch over to an 8/0. I do this because when we finish up against the bead, I don't like there to be a huge gap of thread. It just bothers me. It's something that I think is not important at all, but looks good to me. Now, one thing when you're wrapping this Peacock Coral, there's 2 sides to Peacock Coral. There's an iridescent green, and then there's kind of a dull black. If you can orient this to have the iridescent green pointing up, your fly is going to look way better in the water. Capture that with 1, 2, or 3, and 3 in front right up against the bead. Trim that. Okay, you can use this wing back and just finish the fly this way. If you want a really simple fly, no worries. But we're going to use a partridge feather here. We're going to take that off the skin, and then what we're going to do is pull all these fibers down, and we're going to trim the very top of this off. And what you're going to end up with is a nice V. I can trim a little bit more of this. Doesn't have to be perfect. You get a nice notched V section of feather here that will create our legs for us. I'm going to set this right on top, and I'm going to use my left hand here to really pinch these fibers down against the body and bring a really nice loose wrap right up against the bead And if it's where I like it, great. If not, those loose wraps, I can manipulate this feather simply by pulling it a little bit, make them a little bit shorter. That looks pretty darn good. So a wrap or two on top to secure it. Trim the remains. And now we're ready for the wing case. Thin skin first. I always tie these in separate. It just makes for a more durable fly. 2 on top of that, and 1 in front of the bead. Same deal with my pearl flashback. Now trim these as close as you can get. Grab your whip finish tool. And about 5 turns of whip finish will do fine. Make sure you get in some of that wing case. Trim that off, break it off. Rotate your fly, take a look, make sure you like how the legs look, everything looks good. You can finish this 100 different ways. You can just use any old head cement if you like. You can use the classic 5-minute epoxy. I've been using a lot of UV from Loon in the thin. It creates a nice little bubble. But tonight, let's get crazy. We're going to use some of this fluorescing finish in thin. I'm going to use 2 coats of this. I had a really thin nozzle here. So make sure you coat the thread wraps in your wing case. Bring your light in, cure that. And then another, take a look at your bubble here. And just finish that wing case bubble up. And that's going to make that pearl flashback just pop and look great and make a really durable fly as if it wasn't already. Cool. That is the Copper John, everyone. Hope you try this one out. It's great. It teaches you a lot about manipulating wire. Tying in biots is a great skill to have. And then mastering this legging technique with this feather really can be useful down the line for anything from soft hackles to big stonefly nymphs. Get tying. I hope to see you out on the water. Thanks for watching.